Welcome back, everybody, for another episode of Reasonable Doubt, brought to you by the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. I'm your host, Jimmy Ardwan. In the co-pilot seat, as always, Julio Vela. What's going on? Thank you. And, ladies and gentlemen, we brought him out of the booth tonight. Justin Harris.
Is it always this bright out here?
It is. You don't.
I like
you
being on that
can't
side.
tell being in the vampire room, huh?
No, it's really too bright.
I'm glad we brought you out of the booth
Thanks.
again. It was a special request, by the way.
Yeah,
I know.
feels like a big honor.
from
or a big
our,
setup. I can't decide which.
Well,
we'll see.
we're going to find out.
Hey, maybe someone lied about it.
We're going to find out from our guest of honor this evening, Joe Venus, in the hot seat.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm glad you grabbed me on the street as I was walking by out there.
You know, it was either you or the other guy in the trench coat.
According to the affidavit.
And he was busy, so you got me.
He was a little bit occupied, but we're gonna be here with Joe for the next hour, and we'll figure out what his beef is with Justin. Why you wanted him on the show tonight? For the next hour, we'll have Twitter up at HTCLA_TV. Of course, is where you can hit us up for questions and comments, or you can call in. 713-807-1794 is the number. I mean, what the hell are we going to talk about tonight, guys? I don't know how we're going to fill this hour. We just don't have
Nothing going on.
to talk about. There's nothing going on right now.
Let's start with something small.
Okay, you go first.
How do
You want to talk about Zion Williams blowing out his shoe before we get to the big
hey,
stuff?
Obama was there, wasn't he?
Was that the game he was at?
Yeah, it was.
The bomber jacket with
It
44?
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, how'd you like to have a bomber jacket with number 44 on
I want one that says 47.
That's
my goal.
That's your prediction?
No, I'm just...
Well, hey. Well, JH 2024.
Yeah, right.
No, I don't want to be after Trump.
So let's start with something small.
Okay.
Adia Jones versus Kim Ogg.
Primary already. She's announced that she's got a primary.
Adia Jones
our sitting
versus
DA.
Kim Ogg.
In the Democratic. We don't even have a Republican challenger yet.
2020, big time. You know, Houston was named maybe one of the spots for the Democratic National Convention. Big deal. Big deal. What do you say? She have a
Get ugly.
chance? It's already getting ugly. Have you seen the Facebook stuff?
I have.
I have not.
It's bad, man.
What's on there?
They challenge Adia's experience.
Oh, this is coming from Kim's side.
No, well, it's coming from
Supporters of Kim.
supporters, not supporters of Adia.
Okay.
Let me say this, though. I think it might just be what the Democratic Party needs.
What?
Young face, young woman, strong. I've known her as a district attorney. She's competent, able, intelligent. She's married to a district court judge.
Right. Who Kim campaigned for.
Ooh, it's about to get. Well, here comes the primaries, I guess. I will just say, and so is Kim Ogg is qualified. Did Kim Ogg ever try a murder case? That was one of the things that was a big thing on the Facebook. How many murder cases have Adia Jones tried? And if she hasn't, then why was she qualified to be the top law dog? Has Kim Ogg tried a case? District Attorney Ogg, a murder case in her past?
I have no idea.
I don't know either.
I mean,
I don't know either.
I don't know enough about her time when she was an ADA.
I don't know.
What else she tried.
Why does simply trying a murder case equal a qualification for the office?
Well, and
Yeah, I don't think it does.
does it?
I mean, that's like saying that you have to be. I mean, do you have to have been a prosecutor in order to be the district attorney?
No. I think the answer to that is no.
Right. It's an elected position. I mean, just like, do you have to have been a federal prosecutor to become Attorney General of the U.S.? No.
No.
I don't think so. You know, look, I think it's interesting, setting aside the criminal justice standpoint, and this is probably a topic for a more politically minded show, and perhaps
We can go there.
People
Hey.
smarter than us on political issues. But, you know, we're not even 60 days in to the Democrats having full power, and they're already tearing each other apart from the inside.
That's just kind of how the Democratic Party does.
Well, but I mean, it's a legitimate.
Yeah.
If you are a Democrat and you see this happening, right? You've got control of Commissioner's Court, you've got control of the district courts, you've got control of the county courts, and it's kind of like when the president has control of both houses of Congress and
Nothing happens.
can't get anything done.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
The DA, who is probably your highest profile elected county official, can't get her request for 102 additional prosecutors. Can't get her request for an additional budget. Can't get her request for a new courthouse. When her party has the votes on Commissioner's Court.
Well, that's the question. Is Kim Ogg, is District Attorney Ogg, is she vulnerable? Is she vulnerable? 2020's coming, and does...
Look, there's clearly a split within the party, right? And we saw this the last time in the Republican Party, right, Joe? I mean,
of course.
We saw what happened with the Republican Party, where you had Republicans for Kim Ogg, basically.
Right.
And they split, and frankly, I think that's probably what cost the Republicans the election. I mean, you can talk about the Beto wave and everything else, but there was a split in the Republican wing who wanted to see criminal justice reform, who didn't feel like Devin Anderson and the other half of the party wanted to go that way.
Well, let's do the other side of the coin. Kim Ogg has the backing of has the purse, all right? She hasn't lost any of that, at least as far as the Crun or the public knows or we know. She's still very solid in Harris County. She's done a lot of good things for Harris County. She's a lot more diversionary programs. She's been very progressive and forward-thinking and leading a charge in some areas of justice reform. But you seriously want 100 and some odd more prosecutors? Seriously? Well, how about you stop filing a bunch of bogus charges?
That may be where the split comes within their own party, right? She's coming and asking for something that typically is a little bit more of a law and order, crime and punishment agenda item that typically and traditionally politically is more conservative, more Republican. She might have had more success with that request 3 months ago than right now more than 3 months ago, but when the Commissioner's Court was controlled by Republicans.
Well, wasn't the vote pretty much on party lines?
Yeah.
The 3 Democrats voted against and the 2 Republicans voted for.
I believe so.
I think that's how it went. So you're onto something there. But I think the reason that the request was doomed, at least right now, from the onset, was how many vacant spots does the Harris County DA's office have right now for prosecutors? Last I heard it was 20.
That's what I heard too.
I mean, how are you going to go to Commissioner's Court and say, I need 102 new people when you already have 20 people? I mean, what are you going to do with 122 vacant positions? The same thing you're doing right now.
You mean to tell me they had 20 and they asked for 120?
I don't know that for a fact, but that's the common number that's been kicked around the courthouse over the last few weeks.
Somebody got in trouble for that typo. Somebody got in a lot of trouble for that typo.
Well, and today, I mean, and of course this is obviously the big topic we're going to get into, but today she renewed her request for additional prosecutors to review the 1,400 cases that are now falling under question. But I mean, look, I'm torn on the issue of the request for more prosecutors, okay? Because, look, you see stuff not getting done, and you can say, well, they shouldn't be filing as many cases, or they shouldn't be filing certain types of cases. And there are going to be those of us in the defense bar who are going to be somewhat cynical and say, well, you know, they stop filing cases, you're going to put a lot of us out of work. Because what the hell is the criminal defense bar going to do? But take the cynicism, back that out a little bit, right? Okay. Everybody was so happy and giddy over this diversion program and the defense bar, yes, we need more diversions. Well, okay. What about the fact that we also need to make sure that the arrest was constitutional?
Right.
So if people just go into a diversion program right away, not only are you diverting them around the court system, you're diverting them away from a defense attorney who could review whether the stop was even legal, who could review whether the arrest was legal, who could review all sorts of stuff of whether or not it's even appropriate for them to enter a diversion program. How many times have you advised your client to turn down a diversion? I've done it a bunch.
Yeah.
I've done it a few times.
I advised a client 2 years ago to turn down a federal pretrial diversion.
What?
And we got the case dismissed.
Of course.
Okay? But, so I don't necessarily agree with this whole upfront diversions. We just cite and release and divert people right away. I don't think that's a good policy. You can talk about all you want about how we need better screening on the intake and maybe they don't need to be filing these cases. Great, but you do need manpower for that because you need manpower in the sense that you have to train them. So that takes people to run the training. You're obviously taking the people who are experienced and putting them into a training role and taking them out of the intake role, right? I mean, you're going to have people that you're going to have a segment of the office that is not really what you're going to call a line prosecutor. They're going to be doing training and training all the new people coming in and training the intake prosecutors. And Joe, you can speak to this better, but I mean, intake is a place for prosecutors to earn extra money.
Well, it was.
It's not anymore.
Not anymore. Since Carol Vance created it up until last year, so for 40 years.
Yeah.
It has been at the beginning of your career, you have to work a few shifts just to get to know it. You have to work 3, but you still got paid basically time and a half to do it. And it's, evening shift or night shift work, and it's kind of miserable.
Yeah.
But then for budgetary concerns, I don't know because I'm not with the county anymore. What I hear is that was the reason. So they've gone and hired some full-time night and evening prosecutors for the intake shift, but they make the same as their counterparts who work during regular working hours. And so now when prosecutors work intake, it's either, and I hear different things, so I'm not 100% certain, but it's either regular pay or it's you don't get any additional pay at all. And so there's got to be an incentive to have the good people who know what they're doing at that office to be willing to sit at a desk at 3 o'clock in the morning and have some rookie officer come in and fumble through why they want a warrant on somebody, and you have to have somebody sharp on the other end of that conversation to be able to kind of steer them through it.
How do you feel about the morale in the DA's office? What's the I mean, because we're all down there, all of us are down there fighting every single day. What's your sense of the morale? Have you sensed a change since January 1st? Is it the same? Do you think, and in what direction do you think it's heading? What's your pulse on it?
I don't know. I can tell you that the pulse of the defense bar is getting tired of the situation that we have, especially with the county courts, with being in docket until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a regular basis. And we haven't gotten a single change in our pay whatsoever. We don't have a boss who represents the defense bar who can go to the county commissioners and ask for an increase in
You're
court
talking, to be
appointed
clear,
pay.
you're talking about from the appointed pay.
For appointed pay, yeah. And then for the retained cases, to be able to have a schedule that allows you to run a business at the same time. So, I mean, I don't know. Do I see prosecutors who are frustrated and who maybe are overworked? Yeah. Do I see that on the defense side just as much? 150%. And that's where, if we're talking about more money in the criminal justice system, before the district attorneys, the almighty state of Texas gets their extra money, I think more money needs to be paid for indigent defense. We're already making improvements by the new inmate processing center being opened. More money needs to be put into mental health options for people, either people who are sitting in jail or people who are out and need those options. Is there sympathy for the district attorney's situation? Not much from me, because there doesn't seem much sympathy for the position that at least you and I, JV, we're in that every single
What
day.
says your pulse, Joe?
Well, a couple points about that. As far as indigent pay for appointed lawyers, for misdemeanor appointments, you're right, no raise has gone into effect. But we have gotten, thanks to the work of some people in previous administrations last fall, felony appointments have gone up, and that schedule takes effect next week, March 1st.
I'm going to stop you there.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it goes back up to what it was before they lowered it.
So, yeah, back in 2008 with the recession, they lowered pay, and it stayed there for 11 years or 10 years plus, and then now it's going back up March 1st.
2019, you'll be getting paid what you got paid in 2008.
Well, I was still at the DA's office in 2008, so I don't remember what the pay scale was. I've seen it, but it's the 2008 plus. It's a little bit more than what the defense bar was receiving in 2008. Probably when you adjust it for inflation, you're absolutely right. No, it's not what it it's not equivalent to what it was back then.
So if we want to talk about like using money to incentivize better lawyers to work on cases in the
Right.
DA's office,
Right.
increasing the pay for indigent pay will get better lawyers on the court-appointed roles, which will get better representation for defendants, which I don't mean to be cynical, but maybe there are people who work in the criminal justice system who don't want better representation for poor people. They may like how things are right now.
Well, that doesn't win you votes.
What's that?
That doesn't win you votes.
No, it doesn't.
I gotta get that Trump money.
You do?
I gotta get that Trump money.
How are you gonna get
right?
that?
Isn't that the Trump money?
He hasn't proved he
He's
hasn't.
not- his-
No, I mean you
the
can
Trump
see
money.
the two factions, right? It's either we don't pay for indigent defense, or we pay it at really low rates, or we just divert everybody around the system, so we
Right.
just bypass
Right.
defense lawyers altogether.
Well, yeah.
I mean it's one or the other. So there's not a lot of people feeling sympathy for defense lawyers right now, and I mean there's no Defense Lawyer Employment Act going on. So I don't expect that to come out anytime soon either. But I mean I do have, like I said, I have constitutional concerns about the diversion program. And what it does. I mean, you're basically telling people don't challenge this, don't challenge our stop, don't challenge what we're doing, and I mean, look what we're in right now, the big story. I mean, because nobody challenges anything.
Right.
And there's also, I mean, and that's an excellent point. And I've had it, like you said, a couple of times in especially domestic violence cases where they can't make them anymore, or in reintegration court where you have people with drug cases. And since the was it the Ali Muhammad? But you're the federal guy. The immigration opinion came out
Yes.
last year. The way Harris County now does most of their pretrial diversions, which is where you have to enter, the judge makes an order that you go into this program, and then you're supervised by the probation department. That counts as a probation.
Restraint on liberty.
Well, right, that counts as probation for immigration law, and you're gone.
Yep.
And so they need a lawyer to explain that to them. And
Right.
you're right, they're not. I mean, that's a specific example of what you're talking about.
I have felt that the pulse, at least on the misdemeanor division, you have Chandler Raines kind of heading that up.
And that's a new.
It's a new, new, and he's been there for a couple months, but new. I would say he's really shaped that division up.
Right.
He's given a lot more responsibility to some the chief prosecutors or prosecutors that I would assume that he believes have good judgment and has, not all, but significantly, in my opinion, giving them decisions to cut cases, look for alternative solutions like diversions, look for alternate methods to dispose or resolve of a case, and I've seen them trim some cases that are just bull cases. They never should have been filed. Two brothers fighting. Before we used to have to fight like hell to get that just away. And now, at least I'm starting to see more. Okay, they're brothers, so that's fine. Or it's just two sisters fighting. Cops never should have been called, and they're dumping things.
Are they making you jump through hoops to dump it?
Less and less frequently. Less and less frequently.
I'm not getting that.
See-
I'm getting, we'll go do this and this and this, and then we'll dismiss it. And then if something happens along the way, or they don't trust that they did it did whatever the thing, community service and take an anger management class, then they back out of the deal.
I've seen a few have to jump through hoops with Nathan Beadle, but those are for cases that you're going to have to go to that head of the division to request special
Right.
provisions, and they've been receptive of that too. I think that they realize that they're understaffed and tight on money, and they should probably be focusing on the real stuff. You know, Kim Ogg said on NPR, Kim Ogg was quoted as saying something, if you want real criminal justice reform, put your money where your mouth is, right? And then she went and asked for 100 prosecutors. If she had asked for 30, I think she probably would have been fine.
Well, the problem wasn't giving her the prosecutors. The problem was that she said they were going to cost $20 million. The county commissioners probably let her go get as much as she wants. They just didn't want to give her any more money,
Well, and that,
right?
and to kind of circle back to the point Jimmy was making earlier about how you need people for intake to supervise that and train that, and I think word had gotten out, that's not what the plan was.
Yeah.
The plan for those 100 prosecutors was to specialize the entire office to run it like the United States Attorney's Office does, which is what, a tenth of the size, and they handle about 100th of the caseload.
Yeah.
And to have everybody in a specialized division, and I think where a lot of the resistance probably came from those Democratic judges that you were talking about is, as we all know, we as defense lawyers are moving targets, and we're always getting phone calls from coordinators. Where are you? Get here next. You know, the judge has got to go to a meeting. And so when we're circling around the courthouse, that's bad enough when you have prosecutors who are home base in that court. And so when we get there, everybody's there. But when you have a defense lawyer traveling around the courthouse, and then you have a prosecutor traveling around the courthouse, it's going to be gridlock.
Animal cruelty.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I love Jessica and everyone in animal cruelty, but gosh, we chase each other for like 2 hours.
But see, that's where if everybody is really true to their word, specializing everybody would work out if they would eliminate everybody coming to court every day.
Yes,
Right.
Okay.
exactly. If the courts would have a better schedule, a better
Correct.
docket management system, then that might work.
It would absolutely work, because the reason it works in federal court is because you don't go to court every day in federal
Right.
court. You go to court for the initial appearance, you get a scheduling order, and they say, you know, this is what you do, and the lawyers get together in the interim on
Right.
their own time. And that system would work, I believe it would work flawlessly on the state side, particularly now where you have the whole DA's office down at the old KBR building,
Right.
and they're having to shuttle back and forth between the courthouse. I mean, that it's absurd for them to have to come down to sit there and negotiate with lawyers in the courtroom to try and get deals done. I mean, it's just not a great environment to facilitate, especially in the old family courthouse, to have lawyers out there in the hallway. You know, they're very people don't realize that. For as much as that family court was an emotional place with people arguing about Tupperware and pots and pans and who's going to get, you know, the dog on this night and whatever, criminal law is just as emotional, because you've got people who are making life-altering decisions in a lot of cases, whether to take a plea deal, whether to go to trial.
Oh, I was talking about prosecutors, but okay.
Yeah. Well, and you're asking them to do it on the spur of the moment. It's because everybody's being pushed in the court.
Today only offer.
The today only offer.
I'll show you the today only offer.
The gallery furniture offer of prosecuting, as I like to call it.
Speaking of the feds, bail bonds are suing the county courts at law again. County criminal courts, aren't
Well,
they?
I want to say one thing before we move on from money sources for the district attorney's office. What'd y'all think about that 9-0 decision on asset forfeiture out of the Supreme Court? Can you imagine, first off, that all 9 agreed on one thing?
So,
secondly,
can somebody
something like
can you tell us? Can somebody?
I haven't read the opinion. I haven't even read the beginning of the opinion. I've read articles about the opinion, which is very dangerous. But I do know that it involves a case of a man who was actually convicted of possession of $400 worth of heroin with the intent to sell it, and that the prosecutor's office, wherever this was, I want to say it was like somewhere in Tennessee or something, that they seized his $40,000 Land Rover and forfeited that as an asset. And that's the case that got overturned. So I'm still not quite sure how this is going to trickle down to all the states, but the consensus seems to be that it's going to make some, you know, tectonic shifts in asset forfeiture around the country, because they applied it to states as well as the federal system.
So let me get this straight. The government can't just come in and take all your.
Apparently not anymore. Yeah. So, and that's what asset forfeiture is, you know, if the government feels like an asset that you own is in some way either the result of or being used in the commission of crime, then they can seize that from you and they can make it their own.
So they really, what they did was they couched it under the 8th Amendment against excessive fines.
Exactly.
Okay, and said, you know, that if you're using asset forfeiture as basically an excessive fine, then, you know, we're going to preclude that.
Right.
And yeah, there's so many questions about asset forfeiture, and that's one of amongst the multitude of topics that I want to talk to you all about with Officer Goins. That's the other one I want to talk to you all about is asset forfeiture, because, and we'll get into it. I mean, I think one of you guys wanted to talk about one other subject before we get into Goins, because I think Goins is going to take the rest of our show. So what did you want?
JV started to get into something.
What did you want to say?
The county criminal courts at law getting sued.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Bail bonds can't make money.
Yeah.
He can't make any money.
Well, what I thought
I got
was
my
That'd be
little
like us
violin
suing.
and
That'd be like us suing the DA's office over the diversion procedure. I mean,
well, and
can't
it's
make any
exactly like
money.
that.
You know?
And again, just like you, Justin, I haven't read the
let's
petition.
form a class action for this.
Hey,
But they said that they have a constitutional right to make money off of
life,
bonds.
liberty, and happiness.
I think one
I missed that
argument that I
provision.
heard is that and this might be slick, is that they're saying that the new rule that was implemented in the county courts that's supposed to be taking into the settlement of the federal bail reform lawsuit is actually contrary to Texas law, that they maybe have to make certain people do a cash bond. I haven't read the details of it, and I should do that before we come on TV and start talking about things we don't know about. But I hope it doesn't.
Well-
I hope it doesn't succeed, but
Bad details.
it could. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Tune
You
in.
know, I know a lot of bail bonds men, bail bonds people.
Persons.
I know a lot of them. I hang out with them.
Yeah, we all do.
I interact with them. They're good people.
They're people.
They're good people.
They're good and bad.
I've had some bad ones,
Come
but
tomorrow.
they're not all
see a bad
bad.
one
They're not
tomorrow.
all bad. I just hope I just want them to get a fair shake. Not at
Yeah.
not at the expense of a human soul.
Well, yeah.
No.
That's it.
And we all know the good ones. We see them all the time down at the courthouse, and we talk to them, and like you said, they're good people. But I've had, and it's kind of like the topic we're going to talk about tonight. Unfortunately, the bad ones are what grab our attention,
Right.
Yeah.
and we try to steer our people away from them, and recommend that they go to the good ones. But as I always tell all my people, I'm not telling you to go to them because we're friends or because I get anything, because they can't by law give me anything, and I wouldn't take it if I could. But these are the people I trust. They've never done my people wrong, so give them a call.
I don't think there's anything wrong with providing a professional recommendation
I don't think so either.
to anything.
And I always give a list. These
Yeah.
are the ones that I think are good.
Yes.
Pick.
Especially if it's to keep them from going to the ones that are going to just end up either costing too much or basically be acting like a probation officer to your client and then frustrating things.
Well, I had one who a couple years ago and I'm not going to mention any names, but after my client went there and they bailed him out, they got him out, and he had paid them, they call him into the office and they say, hey, the court's not requiring that you have an ankle monitor, but we are. And if you don't put it on, we're going to surrender your bond. And of course, I brought that to the judge's attention, and she flipped out and said that's not going to happen, and so that didn't happen. But something like that. And ever since then, I've told people, don't go there.
It's the classic one where, you bonded my guy out. He gets arrested on some 2B in some out of county, and you knew that warrant was there, and his court's coming up. He's going to miss it in Harris County because he's in custody on that 2B out wherever he's at. And they said, well, it looks like I got to jump off the bond.
Right.
What would you do? Yeah, did you take money from them? I sure did. Yeah, I'd probably honor your obligation.
Right. It's a
Don't
contract.
jump off the bond because you knew he's going to be in custody in another county.
Yeah.
Well.
Or return the money.
Yeah, or give him back. No, you're on the bond already, dude. You're on the bond. Don't jump off.
I'm going to take this time to remind everybody, Twitter is up. If you want questions, comments to submit to us at HCCL_TV. Phone number's up there at the bottom of your screen, 713-807-1794. I remind you of that because once we get started on this, I think we're just going to keep going until somebody interrupts us.
We're going to keep going.
Yeah, going. That's a good one, man. You're on a roll right now.
Oh, man. Oh, hey.
That's,
I swear to it.
That is Meredith Morse style right there.
What?
All right, so let's start with.
I
with
prefer
this.
not.
Officer Gerald Goins, the Houston Police Department. It's not what now? 2 weeks ago.
Two,
More
three.
than that, I think. 3.
Yeah, about that. I think it had just happened, maybe before the last show we had.
I thought it was January 29th. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's where it was.
Okay. Yeah, January 28th. So so it's been 3 weeks now. There was a raid on a home here in Houston that ended up with the 2 owners of the home being killed. A no-knock raid.
What's a no-knock raid?
Huh?
What's a no-knock
Where
raid?
they just basically burst into the home.
They don't knock on the door.
Right. You have a provision in the search. You're supposed to knock and announce your presence as a law enforcement officer, which is police open up, give them a reasonable amount of time. If they don't, then you breach. But there is a provision in the code that allows for police officers to request from a judge and the judge to grant what we commonly refer to as a no-knock warrant, which they state in there they believe, based on credible and reliable information that they've gathered from an informant typically, or not, that there are conditions that they've seen that they believe if they do, that knocking and announcing their presence will be futile because they will destroy evidence, the occupants will destroy evidence, or it will be dangerous for the officers. They'll get weapons and fire on the officers. So they always put in there, we've seen these hundreds, if not thousands of times between the four of us, that, there were firearms in the home, or we typically know that narcotics dealers, which is really what we're almost always talking about, have firearms readily available, and it will be dangerous for the officers going in. So we're asking for a no-knock, and the judges, in this case, will grant that no-knock.
What I don't get is, let's assume this was a kosher raid, and it wasn't just some idiot who decided to do a no-knock on an extremely dangerous house. Let's just assume. They had a meeting beforehand, and they knew who was in the house. They could have said, and they knew when they got there and who was in the house. Hey, let's chill out for an hour or two and see when one of them decides to go get something to eat, take him. And then, knowing that there's only one other person in the house, or let's keep watching that house until the other person decides to leave the home and get him there. But no, at some point somebody said, no, I got this no-knock warrant. Let's just kick the hell out of the door, go in guns a-blazing and take these guys down. And somebody says, cool, it's a good idea. How absurd is that? That's almost just as absurd as some cop lying on an affidavit naming to wit, suspect, white male. He's approximately 55 years of age, 5 feet 11 inches in height, and 180 pounds in weight. This guy lies in a warrant, names the dude that dies. That is absolutely insane to me. How does that happen?
Well, because look, my suspicion is, and I think you were talking about it before we went on the show, that this may have been a situation, and I think when you look at this whole thing, this is what's scary about it. If you ever have a beef with a cop, if you don't get along with him, he doesn't like the way you talk to him in whatever kind of situation, look how easy it is for him to get a warrant, to manufacture an informant, to go out and get a no-knock raid warrant, claiming that we have an informant who told us that these people are dealing heroin, and go get a frickin' traffic court judge to sign it. Didn't take it to the DA's office for review, didn't take it to a county court judge for review, sure as hell didn't take it to a district court judge for review, went to a traffic court judge with no review by anybody.
And you made a really good point, and I don't know if everybody knows that there are basically two ways that these guys, especially HPD, can get a search warrant. The way that it had been done most of the time, and I was at the DA's office from 2002 till 2013, and most of the time the way it was done was these officers would go, especially these narcotics officers, they would go to very seasoned prosecutors who only handled narcotics cases. And we're talking very seasoned felony twos, felony district court chiefs, so for everybody who doesn't know, people who have tried murder cases, who have tried kilo cases, ag robbery cases, sexual assault cases. These guys are reviewing these search warrants.
People who have the experience to call BS.
Right, and would.
Yeah.
And then they take them from the DA's office, from these prosecutors, these special crimes prosecutors, to a district court judge typically, and there's always one on call, 24 hours a day. And they go up there, and we've all seen it, whether we're in trial with these judges or whether it's in the middle of the docket or in the middle of the afternoon. They walk in and they just wait until the judge is available and ready for them. They call them up. The judge will review it right there at the bench. They will, they'll check it out, see if they have any questions. They'll ask the officer. If they think it needs to be corrected, they'll tell them to correct it. Typically, when the DAs were reviewing it, that had already been done. you know, as an aside, I was in a district court the other day, and I saw the district court judge, one of the new district court judges. In the 10 minutes I was in there were 2 officers waiting. He turned them both away because their warrants lacked probable cause.
Really?
So, okay.
But the way this one was
I've never
done, I'm
seen
sorry.
that. I've seen that
I-
interaction, but I've never seen a judge say no.
I saw it
Wow.
2 days ago, and I was good for you, Judge.
Did they just go next door, or did they go fix their warrant?
I didn't follow them, but they were very, you know,
Because they can
just
do that,
downtrodden
right?
when
if
they
one
walked
judge
away.
says no, they can just go to another judge with the same thing.
Right, because there's no way to track it. There's no official action taken by that judge. They just say, hey, now, maybe the judge interlineated, go fix this, do that. You know, that would maybe be a good practice to do. But the other way, especially HPD has done it, and this started happening, I started noticing it in these HPD cases toward the end of my tenure when I was a district court chief with the DA's office, was these HPD officers, instead of going to the DA's office and having them write the warrant or at least review the warrant the officer had written and taking it to a district court or maybe even a county court judge, they run them over to the City of Houston judges who, you know, I guess the ones who sign these types of warrants have to be lawyers, but like you said, these are traffic court judges.
Yeah.
And technically they're magistrates under the statute, so they can sign these warrants, like in this case.
Like in
for-
Waco with the biker case.
How do you,
Right.
how do you,
See
how
how
do you
well
think
that
this
worked out.
judge feels? This one, magistrate, I can't read the signature.
Well, in the judges, if defense, we didn't really said what we're kind of beating around the bush, but the Officer Goins or investigator Detective Goins is accused of lying in this affidavit, right?
Right.
So I mean, if he lied and the judge
And-
didn't know he lied,
I don't think anybody can blame it on the judge.
right?
Nobody
No,
can.
Now,
because look,
now
it's-
maybe the judge should ask questions, and that's a different conversation. But you know,
Well, and here's the problem. So now, they've got 1,400 cases under review, which of course we talked about earlier. The district attorney has renewed her request for additional prosecutors to help with that review process.
aren't they so overlooked? That's just like one prosecutor for 1,400 cases.
I'll do it,
Right.
Kim Mogg, I'll do it
But-
for $350,000. I'll review every single one of them.
Instead of 20 million.
So that's 20 million.
350,000, all cases reviewed. Dude, Goins is going down.
But look, you make a great point, Justin. That it's what what the judge is put in front of him. I mean, if on its face it's a facially valid warrant, what is the judge supposed to do? You know, and that's kind of the issue that we have, is that you bring it to a lesser experienced judge over in traffic court who doesn't review warrants for, you know, on a frequent basis, who probably was not at the district attorney's office, who wasn't trying high-level cases, who wasn't trying drug cases. And the thing that spooks me about this is if a officer really has a problem with you, going back to my initial concept of this, he can go out, he can get a warrant, he can, you know, come in, raid your home, shoot and kill you, and but for this whole
Jesus
thing unraveling, you know,
Never know.
You know,
never know.
I've seen this. This is in training day.
Yeah.
This happened this is training
from
day.
a movie.
This
Yeah, I
is
mean,
training
I
day.
don't mean to sound like, you know, Mel Gibson in Conspiracy Theory or anything, but I mean, it does, because you look at all the people now that they're, you know, the media is reviewing all these old cases, and people who were locked up, they're dismissing all of his cases, they're reviewing all of his warrants. I mean, God knows how many people were arrested based upon and charged, convicted, pled guilty to stuff.
So you don't
where
think
Well, let me.
this
was
was
no
his
probable
first time?
cause.
So you don't think this was his first time?
I've heard stories that people are saying that DAs around the office have known for over a decade that he was a dirty cop.
How dare, if they knew that, because I've heard that too. If they knew that, how dare they rely?
again-
How dare them?
Again, suspecting that somebody's a dirty cop and proving it are always, it's
true.
always the problem, right?
Okay, so let's.
And
Okay,
if this guy is smart enough, like he was in this situation, to go around the people that can call BS on him and go to somebody who's not as experienced and doesn't really know what to look for necessarily in one of these types of situations, he's found his loophole in the system.
So two things. One, I'd like to discuss the chief's response to this,
Yeah.
Chief Acevedo?
right? But two, right before we get there, all right, hold on. Supposedly they go to the guy while he's in the hospital bed and they said, "Who's the informant?" And he writes a name. And then they leave and they come back and they say, "That doesn't check out. Who's the informant?" And the guy is half dead and writes. And then those things aren't checking out. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt that he was he was not in his right mind either. The dude's struggling for his life, just got shot, PTSD. Like, is the media, or has the media jumped to a conclusion? Do we really know all the facts?
We don't. I mean, look, we are sitting here, and we're talking about if this, if that. I mean, if this stuff is true, and you have to remember, he is now potentially. I mean, the chief of police has come out and said he's going to get charged. I mean, okay, I guess if the chief knows that already, then so be it. But look, Goins has.
Does he have to say that though?
I think.
Does he have to say that?
Yeah, because look, I think I think the police chief has enough problems as it is. This is just exacerbated.
He was brought into Houston for this reason.
Yeah.
To clean up HPD he came from Austin for that.
Right, and he's done a terrible job.
Yeah.
Frankly, he's tried to make himself more of a politician than an actual police chief.
That's fair.
He's more concerned about him, how he looks as a politician, potentially for whatever he's going to do next in life, instead of worrying about fixing the department.
Which might explain then the question that you're asking, like his response.
And then you get this jerk off Gamaldi.
Is that the union president?
The president guy, man, he needs to
Dude.
go.
Okay, yeah.
He needs to go. He's not doing any police officers any favors.
No, I mean, you talk about somebody I would just like to.
He's kind of funny though, man.
And you know what? I think he might come on this show.
He is kind
like,
of a
if he wants to
character.
come on the show, you guys talk to him one-on-one. Like, I think that would be an interesting show. Let him,
Does he have egg on his face?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Does he have egg on his face?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A couple.
Do you remember? I mean, do you remember the movie Office Space?
Yes.
Do you remember the game Jumping to Conclusions? Because that's what he did. Okay.
Well, okay, going on that same
I'm a people person.
on that same
I deal
note,
with people.
Has the chief jumped to a conclusion? Has the media jumped to a conclusion? Have we all jumped to a conclusion?
Well, we all have a job, and I actually meant to say this before coming on here, is you're absolutely right. I mean, he's a suspect, and he's innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
So far, what's in the media, which we all know doesn't necessarily mean it's accurate, but what's in the media,
Ain't looking good.
there's a lot of evidence against him.
And look, he's got one of the best lawyers representing him
Absolutely.
in this city, in Nicole DeBoer. So he could not have a better representation.
Present company excluded.
When I think of Nicole DeBoer, almost simultaneously, I think lioness.
Oh yeah.
No, I think lion. I think advocate.
Yeah.
I think warrior.
Right.
She's so good.
She's awesome.
She is so good. And you know what? She's in good hands.
He's in good hands.
He's in good hands. He's in good hands.
So, okay, they're reviewing the 1,400 cases that he has. What about, I guarantee you, and I suspect it was an issue with this, they probably looked at the property records of Tuttle, saw they own this house outright. Hey, man, this is prime asset forfeiture right here. We're just talking about asset
You
forfeiture.
think?
Absolutely.
Can you imagine if it had ties to the DF office?
But look, man, are they going to go back and review all the 1,400 asset forfeiture cases?
No, there's
And
no way.
the millions of dollars that were likely seized by this guy's investigation?
And is there any recourse?
You think they're going to return the money?
No. They've already spent the money. You've seen
Yeah, the
those-
county doesn't
those
have the money.
laptops
Right.
they have.
But I mean,
We don't have a courthouse right now.
but-
They don't have money
but
to
I
give back
think,
to people.
but I think that should be another component that should be at least reviewed.
Absolutely.
I mean, look, we're coming on the heels now of this Supreme Court decision that says, hey, there's a strong chance that you cannot go forward with this because it violates the Eighth Amendment and excessive fines. But this might be the final straw that we can finally put to bed civil asset forfeiture.
You think
know?
it's because they have a bias? They have this. I mean, there's something that's just wrong with seizing these. I think there's something wrong with seizing this property, sometimes without even criminal charges being filed.
Exactly. And what about if it's seized pursuant to a false warrant? They're not just lining up to give the money back, give the property back.
No. I have all kinds of problems with asset forfeiture. I think if the way you want to make asset forfeiture go away, if the Supreme Court didn't already put the nail in the coffin, is you just link the funds to indigent defense, and don't give the money back to law enforcement or district attorney's offices. Let them seize
Well,
it all
good
they
luck
want.
with
They don't have the buy. They don't have their motivation for
I
it.
mean, the DEA is pretty much almost self-funded off their asset
I know.
forfeitures.
Well, the Harris County DA's office has quite a treasure chest of
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all have ever been down there, but in the basement of the courthouse is the firearms training simulator, the FATS machine. I believe that back in 2003, and I could be wrong, but this is my recollection, is that Chuck Rosenthal paid for that with asset forfeiture funds.
I was told that
Ian,
that Pat Lycos paid for all the new media in the courtrooms, the 3 TVs and the little console that has all the control equipment in it.
And her
That was
press
all paid
conference
for.
room on the 6th floor.
Yeah, that was all paid for through the asset forfeiture.
Could be.
And there's no way that they don't have the money to hire more prosecutors, but they all got each at least county court prosecutor got. I looked those up because they're nice little laptops. They're $1,000 laptops. Each one of those little Dells or HPs, whatever they are, they're on
Dells.
par with an Apple. And
Isn't
they're
it-
pricey. I'm pretty sure that kind of money is what they use asset forfeiture for. And I've also we're doing some research on this into my office, but I've also, from what I understand, asset forfeiture has ticked up under the Democratic administration versus previous administrations.
Well, that's because they're getting
get-
money from their county commissioners.
and we
Yeah,
gotta
that's
we
another way to
gotta
get
we
it.
gotta pay for all the programs.
Is that what Democrats do, is take people's money
We gotta pay for the programs.
and disperse it how they see
Isn't that
fit?
crazy?
Yeah,
Look,
we're
isn't
supposed to do
this-
it from the wealthy people to the poor people, not from the poor people to everybody.
Well, is it-
Well,
is it-
technically, this is people who have
Sure.
are
Yeah,
are
vulnerable
ill-gotten gains.
populations. Yeah,
Allegedly.
Yeah.
vulnerable populations
Right.
pay for the crime stuff to continue to prosecute them and perpetuate their cycle.
Right.
But
There you
but, but I think what a lot of people don't realize is in the state of Texas, the asset forfeiture statute allows the state to seize the property, money, cars, houses, whatever, if they can prove on a civil preponderance standard that the actions are a violation of the state of Texas, any other state, or the federal government. So it's not a direct link. They don't have to prove a violation of the Texas Penal Code. They could prove a violation of the Louisiana Penal Code, of the
amazing.
Oklahoma Penal Code,
That's amazing.
of a federal law. If they can't figure out a Texas Penal Code statute that it fits into, just pick one.
Catching turtles without a license
Yeah.
in federal court. There you
here-
go. Take
here-
all your money.
Here's
Exactly.
a thought, DA office. Once you go after some big money, big time fish, stop arresting all these little petty offenses so we can all focus on what really needs to happen. Justice.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna say what's a petty offense, what's a serious offense, but go ahead.
Well, and not only that, but look, they are so understaffed, they can't even deal with the petty offenses. Okay.
Yep.
How do you expect them? And look, I don't disagree with you. I mean, there are probably companies dumping stuff all up and down the ship channel that could be prosecuted for environmental crimes. There are probably
that are hurting more people than the shoplifting case.
there are probably people committing bank fraud, wire fraud, everything under the sun in terms of Ponzi schemes and everything else. But or banks doing stuff shady with charging people. I mean, look what happened to Wells Fargo. No charges came out of that. How do you think the district attorney is going to fight those kind of cases?
They can't.
They can't, because if they are so understaffed that they can't even handle what they have right now. When you take on a Exxon or a Wells Fargo or somebody like that, or an executive there, they're going to hire the biggest law firm they can, and their war chest is unlimited. They'll bury the DA's office in paperwork. They'll bury them in so many motions, they won't be able to respond to them in time. What? So, functionally, how do you do that?
I don't think they can. I think there needs to be and also with the turnover rate, that's tough. I will say though, I think the group that they have in now, the younger crowd, I think they got good heads on their shoulders. I don't think all of them don't know what they're doing, and they got good leadership.
Yeah.
And I think, at least from the insider perspective, they got that good going for them. Although they're way overworked. I mean, I love putting a case over here and just making it disappear.
Well, and look,
You know?
the other thing too is you're talking about going after the big fish, And usually what that means, what people are meaning is go after the corporations who are violating. Don't go after the low-hanging fruit, okay? Those are paper-intensive cases that require a ton of reading. I mean, you're talking about terabytes worth of documents to go through, okay? And honestly, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong at this, but the reason most people go to the DA's office because they don't want to have to sit there and review all that paperwork.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of paperwork in a murder case.
You mean rather than going to a civil firm?
Right.
Yeah.
And dealing with civil discovery.
Yeah, the state prosecutors, especially here, are they, and it's. I mean, this isn't supposed to be an insult because every one of them, including myself when I was there, would take pride in this moniker. You're a blood and guts guy.
Absolutely.
And that's what you like. That's what you do. You go after murderers or sexual assaults or aggravated robberies, and usually those aren't the. I mean, with the exception of Resendiz 20 years ago, you're not talking about a big fish. So you know.
Whatever happened to Lucky? Wasn't Lucky getting tried over here?
I
Remember
don't.
Lucky?
I don't think it's gone back yet, but I could be wrong.
Bad kid. Most notorious criminal in the last 50 years. Anyways.
Speaking of which, I think one of the things that we probably ought to discuss in the time we have left is we talked about it briefly, but Acevedo said that this officer is going to get charged.
Yeah.
What charges potentially does he face?
Well, so there's twofold, right? I mean, I've heard all the way up to murder.
Yeah,
On
felony
the state
murder.
side.
Felony murder?
And now there is, the FBI's come out and said they're investigating criminal civil rights violations
Yeah.
on the federal statutes.
And is there a recourse for the next of kin to the individuals who were killed?
Sure. I mean, look, this.
Well, what was the case that ended up bringing the Rosenthal, and I forget the name, but the two brothers
Yes.
who sued the sheriff's department, and then that led to
Right.
the Chuck Rosenthal emails that then that officer included.
And that's why, in my opinion, when, not if, when the family sues, the estate sues the city, this is going to be the quickest settlement in the history of the city because the city cannot afford to go through the civil discovery on this.
Nope.
They just can't.
I mean, you can read that article in the Chronicle.
Oh, gosh.
That
Can you
goes back to
imagine?
'92.
Yeah.
you
And
imagine?
it's, I mean, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Got to be.
I mean,
They would open up so much stuff.
Oh, God.
And they'd learn where Goins learned this stuff.
Right.
Ooh.
Who that person learned from. Yeah.
It would
They,
be
they have
ugly.
no interest in doing that whatsoever.
No.
I was having a debate with actually, shockingly, a defense lawyer yesterday about whether or not the elements of felony murder are met here. And his argument was against it, saying, well, but he's got a defense because he's acting on a valid warrant. And my argument was it's not a valid warrant. Maybe the other officers, I would say you have to separate them out. You've got the guy who if he did, lied in the affidavit and knew this wasn't a valid warrant because he did not have probable cause.
Sure.
And a warrant has to be based on probable cause. He knew. He's probably the only person who knew
Right.
that this warrant was not based on probable cause. Does that make it a valid warrant? And the question is, does it have to be a valid warrant for him to have that defense, or is it just a warrant?
Well, is
Didn't
there a good
Frank-
faith exception in Texas?
Didn't Franks
I
v.
believe
Delaware-
so.
There is, and didn't Franks v. Delaware settle that though? If you take out the false part of the affidavit, that doesn't, and then does the affidavit stand on probable cause there? If it doesn't, then the warrant is invalid.
I think
Right,
Texas has a
but the
trick.
question is that we had is, does it matter if the warrant's valid, or does it just matter that the officer had a warrant signed by a magistrate? My opinion is no. I think this one officer, if this is all true, and that's of course the question we have to answer, if this is all true, and this officer knew this was not a valid warrant based on probable cause, does he have a defense? My opinion is no.
No,
He doesn't.
absolutely not. If he knew,
Right.
yeah, absolutely not. I think that, but I think your distinction is exactly right. What was his? Is there a good faith exception in
Right.
Texas? And I think there is, but I think Texas has a trick that distinguishes it from the federal side.
Well, and I think the other officers, I think it's pretty clear if they weren't there,
Sure,
if they didn't
sure.
know this was not a valid warrant, they're covered. Now, maybe there are some other things they'll be charged with. I understand one of them maybe lied in a report. Maybe he gets charged or certainly fired for that. But if the other guys who went in didn't know, then they're covered. And that brings up, kind of what I think what you were talking about earlier, JV, about how he goes in and kills these two people. Well, if he lied in that warrant, which it's certainly looking like he did, if he lied in that warrant, not only did he kill those two people and that dog, but he put his other fellow police officers literally within inches of their lives.
Right.
And that's something nobody's really talked about. We've all obviously focused on the poor people who've been shot and killed, but what about his fellow officers who were relying on him and he walked them into a death
That's
trap?
what you asked
Jeez,
about
man.
morale earlier. I really want to know what morale's like around HPD. I want to know how many officers, and I suspect the majority of them are very angry with Detective Goins, because
Right.
the majority of police officers are decent human beings and they want to do the right thing. And when there's a bad apple, just like we all get angry when we find out about an attorney doing something that makes us all look bad, I got to believe that there's a lot of angry people over there. But I'm just real curious some of those conversations going, because Goins is in the hospital, right?
He
I think
is.
he's out of ICU is what I read, but he's
think so.
still in the hospital.
Curious how kind of angry conversations are being had around there.
Dude says the confidential informant has provided informant and assistance to officers in the past on at least 10 prior occasions. He made up this guy.
Yeah, the allegation is there's no actual CI, right? No confidential
He
information.
just made him up.
Yeah.
Is the allegation.
That's it. That's what they're saying. I mean, I would be interested to see where the FBI's civil rights investigation goes on this thing.
Well, and what's crazy about that is, so if the state files, I don't think the state could make, I mean, maybe the state could make capital murder, but I doubt it on this. Maybe. It's weak. It's certainly a much better felony murder case, which almost sounds contradictory.
How would they make capital murder?
Well, and that's the point. The problem is if you're in the course of committing another felony,
Sure.
which would be burglary of habitation in this case, or aggravated robbery potentially, aggravated assault, then you have to have specific intent to kill those people. And that's where I think the state fails.
Yeah.
But in this 18 U.S.C. 242 federal prosecution,
It's just
death
if somebody
penalty's
dies.
on the table.
Correct.
And so this could be a landmark watershed moment.
You think they ain't gonna kill a cop, man? They ain't gonna kill no cop.
What if they don't? What
30
if they
seconds.
don't charge him, or what if they do and a grand jury no bills him?
They grand jury ain't gonna no bill him.
Well,
either.
and you've got,
Because the victims were white, right?
yes.
They were.
So we don't have like issues with
I think this transcends
minorities.
race, man.
I think it is,
I
too.
agree.
I think this
I don't think it
transcends
falls into
race.
that, but I'm just
You technically, I mean, what you have is, no matter what race you have people in power going into somebody else's home,
Oh, I
and they
get that.
don't have the power,
No, I
and
get
these
that.
people die.
I'm just wondering if there's going to be like marches in the streets and outrage if nothing happens. I mean,
I'm sure there will be.
we're talking about the maximum of what could happen to him, but
Right.
we so
I'd expect there
consistently
to be.
police officers get very
I
little
don't
accountability.
with Ogg, DA Ogg. I don't want to be disrespectful.
Right, I don't either. Madam Ogg,
and
Ogg, yeah.
coming out, Chief Acevedo coming out and saying he will be charged. And just kind of some inside baseball on prosecutors going into a grand jury. If they want these charges, I'm not saying this always happens, but if the DA's office, HPD, wants these charges, state side, he gets indicted.
Yeah.
Federal side, different story. I've never done that before, although we all know those guys over there. I think they're going to do a great job, and whatever they want to happen is going to happen.
That's all. That's a wrap, guys. That went fast.
It does go by very fast.
We're going to have to continue this discussion on a later date, hopefully when we have some more information about it. But I want to thank our guest, Joe Venus.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming on. We're going to have to get you back on, drag
Absolutely.
you back down here.
It won't be 7 years this time.
That's right, exactly.
It's been that long?
I also want to
Crazy,
thank
man.
our intrepid producer for coming out of the booth tonight and joining us.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
thanks for letting me, guys.
Yeah, we never got the answer, but we'll figure it out.
Golf clap.
That's all we have for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you for joining us. For my co-pilot, Julio Vela, I'm Jimmy Ardwan. We'll see you next week for another episode of Reasonable Doubt. Good night.